What up, what up, what up, everyone? Welcome back to Just a Minute. My name is Austin Smith, and as always, I'm joined by my partner in crime. He's the editor-in-chief here at HoopSeen.com. He's Justin Young, and we're excited for episode number 30. Man, the ball just keeps rolling. Jay Wild, looks like you on a little road trip, brother. Talk to us.
Yeah, road tripping. When we're recording this, it's early on a Sunday morning in Las Vegas. So if that looks like my face looks like, confirmed. So yeah, out here in Vegas for some hoops and yeah, a lot of basketball going on. There's the G League showcase, there's tons of college games, and there's the Tarkanian Classic, man. So Vegas is the center of basketball right now.
Well, let's touch on the third one you talked about, brother, the prestigious Tarkanian Classic. And we know that this is one of two pre-Christmas events you got to be at if you're a grassroots basketball fan, if you're a grassroots basketball aficionado, if you want to say that. But Jay Watt, tell us a little bit briefly about the Tarkanian Classic and kind of what you've seen a little bit so far.
Yeah, I mean, this year there was over 170 teams between the boys and the girls divisions. And on top of that, they had two different events within the brand of the Tark Classic. And so the first 3 days was the prep school invitational. And so we had some really high level prep schools there. And the back half is the high school tournament. Within the high school tournament, there's all these different brackets within that as well. So tons of teams, there's players for every level, tons of teams from the West. There's some teams actually from Georgia and Florida, Texas, I think some up in the Northeast. But yeah, I mean, like for like West Coast teams, like it's such a great opportunity to see a ton of teams from LA, teams from Arizona, obviously teams from here in Vegas, Utah, Northwest. So yeah, I mean, terrific event for all kinds of evaluations. And ultimately it led to some great games with some great players.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, let's talk about some teams for a second. Overall, with your time there, what's been the best team? Who's been the best team you've seen?
Yeah, it's a great question because the level of talent here is so high. I mean, I think you can make an argument for so many teams, but when we're looking in totality of the country, and it's hard because how do we differentiate now, like who are the top teams? Are we looking at all the prep schools? Are we looking at all the community-based high schools? And so that's kind of an interesting narrative and an interesting argument to make for both sides. But to me, the team that made the most impression, the biggest impression on me was Link Academy out of Missouri. And that's a team that I know a lot of people have raved about. And this was my first time to see them this season, and justifiably so. They should be raved about. They're really, really good. I tweeted out after I watched them that I think they could be a top 4 team in the country. And I think when you look at the prep schools, I think they fall in that category right there with AZ Compass Prep, who I think is the number 1 team in the country. You got Montverde, you got IMG, and I think Leak Academy is part of that group as well. Now, within the scholastic side, you've got Duncanville High School, who obviously beat Montverde at the Hall of Fame, Naismith Hall of Fame Classic last week in Arizona as well. So I think League Academy is one of those teams that can compete for the very top. I know when we look in the big picture view, I think they're a contender for Geico. Like Austin, to me, they may have the best front line in all of high school hoops. Can we run through their roster?
Yeah, because I mean the roster is pick your high major school. I mean, but yeah,
run through it. Like talk to me about just give everybody an idea like who they got.
Yeah, sure. So you got Terrence Reed Jr. going to Michigan, Felix Okapra going to Ohio State, Omaha Billu is a class of 23 stud who's obviously a high major prospect in his own. You got Jordan Walsh who's going to Arkansas, and then Julian Phillips who's going to LSU. So
I mean, that's just your front line, right? Like that's interchangeable. Yeah. So like not all those guys are starting. Okay. So it's insane. And so for me, like the night where I was like really blown away by their team, I thought Terrence Reed Jr., who was a really huge and really talented kid going to Michigan, and Felix Okapra, who's ironically going to Ohio State. So here you have Michigan and Ohio State kids playing together and looking really good. We know Felix really well, right? Like he's played at HoopSeen since he was a freshman, and I think he probably leads HoopSeen history in the most block shots in our platform, like legitimately. I think he's one of the best shot blockers I've ever covered. And then you mix in a guy like Julian Phillips, who's interchangeable, and you got a guy like Jordan Walsh, who's a highlight every time he touches it. And like you said, Omaha Billu, who to me is a guy that within the 2023 class is, I think, going to benefit the most from this grouping because he's learning from all of these guys and all the skills they bring to the table. But that front line alone causes so many problems, and defensively they really mess you up. I'd love to see those guys match up with all those other teams that I mentioned: Duncanville, Montverde, IMG, and AZ Compass Prep. So I think Link Academy certainly made an impression, and I think they're definitive top 4 prep school, top 5 overall school in the country. Man, I love what they're all about. Love the way they're coached. great depth. And I think that's a program that when we talk about high school hoops in like February, March, I think Link Academy is going to be in that category for a team that's going to contend for a national title.
Man, well, I mean, you talk about the front line again, Jay. Just going back to it, that front line matches up with all the other premier programs we know here in high school basketball. And me being a basketball fan too, like I want to see them match up against your IMGs, your Montverge, your Duncanville. Okay, all those premier schools. We got to find a way to get Link Academy in the mix, man. I got to see him for my own eyes.
Well, they reminded me a lot of what IMG was the last couple of years, where they've got, Diabate, who's now in Michigan, and they've got Jarace Walker, who's there now, and Brandon Hunt, Hatfield Huntley, who played there as well. And all the size they've got, Eric Daly Jr. That this Link front line reminds me a lot of that IMG group that was so hard to guard and so hard to match up with over the last couple of years. But this Link group is really, really talented. Love what I saw from them, man. I wish I watched them a little bit more too, honestly. And I watched every game they played. So really impressive group out of Missouri.
Good deal. Got to add Link Academy to must-see TV, man. And those high school programs you got to take a look at as the season continues. Let's talk about the best game. Who'd you like watching the best in their matchup?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with so many teams and so many brackets, like it's hard to drill it down to just one. But ultimately, I thought the one that really stood out to me the most was St. Bernard out of California playing our friends at Oak Ridge out of Orlando with Coach Steve Reese. It was down to the wire. It was back-to-back. It was possession for possession. To me, like that was the game where I was like, okay, like this is the one that we're going to probably look back, at least for me, and say that was probably the best game. Because we had some games that weren't really good. We had some games that were some blowouts. We had some games that like just seemed like they would never end because of all the whistles. Yeah. But this game between St. Bernard and Oak Ridge was competitive. It was I'll match your shot with my shot, and I thought that was the game. I saw St. Bernard a lot with Section 7 over the summertime.
Okay,
really love Darius Carr. I think he's a terrific top 100 guy, like a Pac-12 priority guy. But I thought Tyler Rawlison, their other guard, was just as good and maybe if not better in that particular game against Oak Ridge. I thought defensively he was an absolute menace. Got to the free throw line. We're seeing his recruitment start to really take off. He had a pretty good recruitment coming into it. A lot of Pac-12, Mountain West, W Coast, WCC, West Coast Conference. But I thought Tyler Rawlison really, to me, was a guy that is starting to carve out a niche for himself as a definitive priority guy, probably for a lot of programs. We had a ton of colleges there too, watching him. So I thought Tyler Rawlison really, really kind of blew up. On the flip side for Oak Ridge, I thought, Fabio Basili is an unsigned senior, an absolute point producer, foot on the gas all the way, very big personality guy. I think he's an interesting player. He's got to find the right program, the right coaching staff for him to thrive, but certainly did enough. But I also thought it was an introduction for a freshman. Coach Steve Reese's son, Jordan Reese, is a freshman, 5'11", 6 feet tall, built like a running back. He's tough, man. He's tough. And so we're going to see each one teach one quite a bit over the years at our HoopSeen events. And I think we're going to be talking a lot about Jalen Reese and the type of point guard. You're going to love him, by the way. Yeah. Like as much as you love good guards, you're going to love this dude. You're going to love him. And I thought big man Tyler Johnson, just a sophomore, also opened up a lot of eyes. 6'6", built like a tight end. Looks like Jared Cook out there, our guy Jared Cook out there running around. But I thought that was the best game. You can go read about it on hoopseen.com. I thought that game between St. Bernard, who were the winners over Oak Ridge, was really, to me, the best game. Ironically enough, the next day, because Oak Ridge lost, they had to play Pebblebrook the next morning out of Georgia. So we have a Georgia team playing a Florida team all the way out here in Las Vegas. So Steve Reese and George Washington, two of our favorite guys in the coaching business, going head to head. So it was kind of interesting. And Pebblebrook won that game.
Yeah, that was probably a very entertaining game to watch, man. Watching with Coach Steve there, like you said, two of our good close friends here at HoopSeen, man, and two just good guys overall.
Yeah,
good guys for sure. Which player at the event, Jay Wash, stood out to you the most? Who caught your attention?
Well, I thought about this one for a long time, actually, because we had so many guys.
Okay.
I think you can make a case for so many players. So when I rewound the thought back, I was like, okay, well, who is the guy that I'd be like, I want to go watch that guy, right? Like I'm in Vegas. This place is all about entertainment, and who really like just kind of put on a show. I thought it was Robert Dillingham with Donda Academy. NC State guy. They're dressed in the I don't know if it can be trademark yet if you're a startup program, but the trademark all black.
All black, yeah.
I thought he was really good, man. Like super slippery ball handler, can get to any spot he wants to, an unbelievable shot maker. I was sitting with my friends from Draft Express who covered the NBA draft, Jonathan Gaboni and Mike Schmitz, and every time he'd make a bucket, we'd all look at each other like, this guy's pretty fun to watch, man. And so, I think when you get a bunch of old heads who watch the game quite a bit and you get excited about a guy and his electricity, Robert Dillingham, to me, I thought was the most entertaining guy that I've seen so far here in Las Vegas, and it's hard to argue with that. I mean, the guy's a bucket.
Yeah.
Have you seen him?
Yeah, man, I've seen all the videos and highlights in the world, man. I've seen him on live stream a couple of times. In person, I haven't yet. I missed my chance with Hoops Given, but everything I've seen, definitely a fan.
You know our guy Justin Byerly, right? Like I love Justin's personality, just so chill all the time. But he perks up a little bit when he talks about Dillingham. So if JB can get a little bit faster heartbeat going by watching Robert Dillingham, then he must be pretty good too. And certainly he was that way out here in Vegas. Like he's so fun to watch, man. Like he's so quick and he's so creative. He's not very big. He's slight of build, but he's like a little Iverson looking out there, honestly. You know what I mean? Like you'll scan the court in pre-games and you not pick him out as like the dude, but he's the dude. Like he can really go, man. Yeah. Got good handles, got good scoring touch, knows how to do it, wants the big moment, wants the ball in his hands. I mean, really good.
He's a pure seat filler, man. NC State got a good one. They got someone that's going to fill some tickets. Absolutely. We always want to make sure, too, that we're taking a look at the guys who are next in line. So, you know me, I love seeing who got next. I hashtag that all the time. And because you always want to see who's going to take that chance to take their game to another level, especially in a big moment. So I'll pose to you this question, JY. Who's on the way up from the Tarkanian Classic? Who'd you like for an up player?
Now, this is the category that I think has a lot of legs to it because there are a lot of guys that I think could fall in this category, that guys that kind of are blowing up. And December is a really important month, too, I think, on the evaluation calendar because there's so many high-level events. We have so many good apples-to-apples competition. Yeah. It gives us a chance to see, a team from the South playing a team from the West and a team from the Midwest playing a team from, like, Texas. And so, like, we get to mix it up. We get to kind of put it in the bag and shake it up again, which we haven't had since probably July, right?
Yeah.
And so, for me, I'm looking at the 2023 class now, like trying to figure out the pecking order at the top. And I'll be honest with you, Austin, it's not really that easy. It's a hard class to evaluate because I don't think we have like a guy that we can put the pin on and just stick him on the top and not move him.
All right.
And so I think that list will be pretty fluid. Excuse me. So I think G.G. Jackson out of Ridgefield High School in Columbia, South Carolina, is a player that I think we have to consider for that top overall spot. Let me go down the checklist if I can. Okay. He's 6'9", 6'10". He looks a little like Dwight Howard at the same age, who was maybe not as like, chiseled and Superman looking, but like just super long, big, broad shoulders. Like kind of looks like Charles Bassey a little bit, who was at Western Kentucky that plays for the Sixers now. That type of body type, really long. There's some parts of his game that I didn't really love, like a ton of one-on-one basketball, some bad shots, some bad decisions, but the bones are there for him to be a great player. Turnaround jump shot like that famous Carmelo Anthony / Kevin Garnett, low post, mid-range, turnaround fadeaway jumper. Certainly saw that he can shoot the three-point shot, can handle the ball, but I think he's going to be at his best from elbow to elbow all the way in. He gets so wide in the post. He can block a ton of shots. He rises above the square for rebounds. I mean, so you're going down all the positive checklists and you're counterbalancing it with the things that you saw that you probably didn't really love. But, listen, North Carolina was out here to play Kentucky here in Vegas, and they brought a full staff to go watch G.G. Jackson play. He's visited North Carolina. He's going to go visit Duke. The G League's out here watching them pretty closely. So I think when you look at the top overall spot, you have to put G.G. Jackson out of Ridgeview High School in that conversation as a guy that could be a contender for that coveted spot. Mm-hmm. And that's saying a lot because I think we have probably 4 or 5 guys that we can make an argument for.
Right.
I think he did everything in his power to put himself in that conversation out here at the Tarkanian Classic.
Wow. Okay. Big things from Gigi. All right. Again, anytime you say, hey, you see a Dwight Howard kind of mold or build, like, hey, that's a big compliment.
From a physical standpoint, right? Like, that's it. This game's different. But I mean, and I was thinking about this, like how many American-born players do we have? Usually we have a lot of guys that are imports from from Africa or Europe or like, somewhere that's not from here, like a Dim Bona is a guy that I thought of, right? Like, those types of players that come over to the United States. But like, we don't really have too many American born, like true big men anymore, like we used to, like we did probably 10, 15 years ago. And so like, when he comes around, you're like, man, you really kind of perk up and you pay attention. So the skill set, the bones are really are there. And I'm interested to see like, how does he continue to discipline his game to really like fine tune it into becoming a guy. But I'm not ready to put like a crown on anybody quite yet. But I certainly he made a good audition for it nonetheless.
Yes, sir. Two other players, J-Wop, wanted to get your opinion on that I think you really had a good chance to take a look at. Let's talk about Amari Abrams, again, from SoCal Academy, and Tyrese Proctor from NBA Academy Australia. What did you like about both of those two?
Yeah, so let's start with Amari Abrams out of SoCal Academy. Okay, so I've seen him a lot this year. They've traveled all over the country. If you're a hoop head, you can probably find him any time zone at some point this season and go watch him play. He was a one-time Texas A&M commit. I think he still technically is, but I think he didn't sign with the Aggies. And here's a kid out of South Texas. The Aggies were the first high major school to offer him.
Right.
I think Amari Abrams is probably one of the best point guards I've seen this year, honestly. Like, his ball handling is elite. His creativity is elite. His competitiveness is elite. He's got great size. I don't know. I know he was out of the top 150 for a while. I think he's below the 100 line on some composite rankings, but I think this is a guy that could really contend for inclusion in the top 50, maybe even top 40. Having a tremendous season. And I'm not really sure that that's in the narrative quite as much as it should be. But I think what Amari Abrams is doing so far is worthy of such a conversation, and a guy that I think, as we move forward, very similar to what we saw last year with Ty Washington, I could see Amari Abrams being a player whose recruitment all of a sudden just takes on all kinds of high majors from all kinds of conferences. But a guy that I think certainly keeps putting it together to make himself a contender for such a praise.
Yeah. Amari Abrams, again, like you talked about, he's that player. Like, I like the I guess you could say that last part about the Ty Washington, kind of blow up like that. But you've seen good things from him at SoCal Academy, and that momentum continues to build. So he's a player you got to take a look at. And again, if he stays with Texas A&M, Buzz Williams is getting another player who can come in and make an impact. So, yeah, I think he's a good one for sure. Tell me about Tyrese Proctor.
Oh, right. Yeah, so the NBA has these academies set up in multiple places. You've got one in Australia, you've got one in Africa, you got one in Latin America, Europe. Excuse me. You've got all these real, like, high level guys. So they brought a team over from the African Academy. They had 3 players from the Australian Academy join that team. One of those players was Tyrese Proctor, out of Australia. His father played from Mississippi, played down in Australia. And so here's Tyrese coming around, and he's playing with this team. 6'3", 6'4". I mean, we're talking elite ball handler, elite speed, great size at 6'2", 6'3". He's already got like the traditional schools that recruit Australian players. St. Mary's is going to be in there, of course, but Arizona's in there. Arizona had some players come from the academy. Tennessee's had some players come from the academy, so they're all involved. Louisville's involved because they have a player at one of their academies as well. And so here you have this player who all the NBA guys who are allowed to come to watch are watching Tyrese Proctor. And then you got all these high major schools. I think he's a guy, and I don't know what to do with like international players and ranking them in American rankings. I'm not sure how you do that because they're not really an American player. But I think Tyrese Proctor, if he were an American player, I think he'd be probably a 5-star guy and a guy that we talk about as McDonald's contender for the class of 2023. He'll be a player that I think comes to the college game and really opens up a ton of eyes. Like we've seen from, so many guys that have come over, like, who's this dude, right? And I think he's next. And I think he's a player that honestly is going to be shaking hands with Adam Silver, if I'm being totally honest with you. Really a high-level guy. So if you have a chance to go watch any of his Australian junior national stuff, go hit the YouTubes today and go check out this young man, or watch the Baller TV stuff from here at Tark.
I'll do it, man.
I know you're on it. That's why I was looking right at you, looking in your soul, telling you to go do it.
I'm king of having YouTube. I will find the player. You hear me? That's one of the best things I think this whole kind of past few years has taught us. You gotta do some YouTube, gotta do some film watching to figure out who a player really is. But I'm intrigued. I am.
Well, throw him in your queue, bro. Like, do it.
Got to. Last few things here, Jay. Well, let's talk about some international flavor for a brief second. What did you what was the vibe you got from some international players or teams from the event?
The prep school division had so many kids. I was telling my wife this. She's like, "How's the day?" I was like, "It was great." Like I probably heard, I felt like I was at the Atlanta airport. I had all these languages being spoken everywhere you turn. It was awesome. It was great because it really just shows you the growth of the game. Right. And maybe we just haven't maybe we just haven't had it because of the pandemic and guys haven't traveled everywhere.
Yeah.
But this was probably the most culturally diverse tournament I've been to pre-pandemic, since the pandemic. Wow. It was really great. Like the academies are great. I love what the NBA is doing with these academies. The NBA Africa team has so many guys. I'm actually going to do a story on it, I think, once we get done with the event. They had a roster of probably, 14 players. And of those 14 players, I wouldn't be shocked if 10 of those guys are legitimately on NBA radars, like legit. Wow. Now, I'm not saying that all of them are going to play in the NBA, but they're definitely on the radar and players that we need to track. The Latin America team had some players, like Cal has a kid named Ndi Okafor, who's Nigerian-born, Irish-raised, playing at the South American Academy. Now isn't going to end up going to Cal. Like, that's such a long, strange trip for that guy. Right. So, like, he's going to be a starter, I think, for the Bears, for Coach Mark Fox, and be a really good player for them. We had a player from New Zealand. We had a player from China. I mean, like, you just go down the list. We had all these players from all over the place, and it was really cool to see, like, the game grow. But it also made me think of the American player that's a high school kid trying to get a college spot. Like, you have to be so good at something to get a scholarship, because now you just have more options fighting against you more than ever before with the transfers and more international players coming to the United States, who are bigger, faster, stronger. Man, you got to really fine tune that one craft you're really good at, so you can be on the floor in college. But yeah, like, I'll do a story on HoopSeen, just the international flavor, man. It was cool. It was cool to see.
You can look and see how the game is being impacted internationally at all levels, the AAU level, and then high school and college, even in the NBA. I mean, the international basketball has become so much of a has had so much of an international significance now, where, I mean, you talk about the MVPs of the past few years. Everybody guys that have won all the defense players. So many different aspects of how internationally this game has grown, and to see it now at the NBA Academy level, and then even with some of those teams that have the players who are from international countries and stuff like that, man, that's dope. I think
about the first team All NBA, right? Yeah. If I were to guess, I don't have it in front of me, but you got Jokic, who was the MVP. You got Giannis, who won the championship. Yep. You got Luka, who's probably at one point probably the most entertaining guy in the league, and all three of those guys are probably all first team All NBA. Mm-hmm. So the majority of the NBA's top guys are international guys.
Yeah.
In that context.
In that context, yeah. And he even had someone like Rudy Gobert, who was like, I think he was first team on defense. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's crazy now, man. That's bananas. Nah, it's pretty cool to watch. And again, like, if you haven't taken note of internationally how the game is growing, you should. And that's just more juice and fuel for all of our players here in the States, man. Work on your game. Spend time working on your game. These guys are coming there hungry, man. They want to earn college scholarships. They want to play at a high level. Nothing, you can't do anything but respect that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Last but not least, Jay, let's talk about Roddy Gale of Wasatch. What do you like about the prospect?
Well, I probably should have put him in that category. Who's on the way up? Not that he was down, but like Wasatch is really starting to put together. Man, I thought Roddy Gale was going to Ohio State, and Chris Bunch are both playing really high level basketball right now. We may have saw him maybe dip a little bit in some rankings, but I think you got to put him back up there. He's playing really, really well for Wasatch Academy, and a player that I think can help Ohio State right away. Attacking the rim, shooting the ball, playing with a ton of confidence. He looked like a college player. Like, when I was watching him, I'm like, he looks like a guy that can compete right now against the Purdues and the Michigan States, the Michigans, and really be really good for Coach Chris Holtman. But I want to make sure we include him. There's so many guys, Austin, that we could talk about in this, wrap up. But I'll have tons of coverage on hoopseen.com. If I ever, that's why I can't do any more podcasts. I'm running out of my voice. We can't do any more the rest of the year, man. This is our last one for 2021.
Last one for 2021. And listen, with this one being number 30, I think it's perfect, bro. I mean, we
ran out of voice.
Hey, this podcast keep getting better and better, man. But your voice is needed, so we need you to like get tea up, water up, whatever you need. Find a way to get some on the way to the airport. Whatever you got to do, get that fixed.
Well, it's better because you're doing it, man. It's better because you're sitting where you're sitting, and we love having you as our host and our digital guy for HoopSeen, and it's been crazy, man. 30. I know you like to keep up with it, but we do so much more too. Like it's probably not 30. Like our best podcasts are probably off the air.
Yeah.
You know,
it's probably one that's probably unreleased, or maybe another conversation we had. Man, there's so much content.
Just a minute uncut. You got it's like a premium channel.
Watch yourself. We'll drop it. We will drop that, and y'all better subscribe because that's the real stuff. No, I'm just playing. Anyways, but JY, again, man, this has been a pretty phenomenal year to say the least. And as you recap on everything we've been able to do here at HoopSeen, with this being episode 30, we're looking forward to 2022.
Yeah.
And to all of you guys watching, man, thank you all for your support. Thank you for liking, subscribing, all that good stuff. Make sure you always stay tuned to everything at hoopseen.com. JY, any last words from you, brother, as you get ready to close out this episode and the year for HoopSeen?
Nah, man, just happy holidays, happy new year. Go be with your families. Go be with the places that are important. And we'll see you guys next year in 2022.
Yes, sir. With that being said, I'm Austin Smith, your HoopSeen host. He is Justin Young, our editor-in-chief here at hoopseen.com. We are signing off for the last Just a Minute episode of 2021. We look forward to seeing you guys in the new year in 2022. Take care.